I never expected my life to end that night. I was only 31, still full of fight, passion, and fire. I had spent most of my adult life advocating for LGBTQ rights, organizing pride events, rallying against religious dogma, and defending love in all its forms. I was raised in a non-religious home. God was never part of my world. And if he existed, he certainly had no place in mine. That was my stance. That was my truth. The night it all happened, I had been dealing with a high fever and shortness of breath for days. My friends begged me to go to the hospital, but I brushed it off. "It's just the flu," I said. I was wrong. I collapsed in my apartment, alone. The last thing I remember before slipping into unconsciousness was the paramedics yelling as they strapped me onto a stretcher. A blur of lights, pain, then darkness. What happened next is impossible to describe with words that make sense in this world. I didn't just black out, I left. It wasn't like sleep. It wasn't like dreaming. It was as if my soul, something I didn't even believe existed, was peeled from my body and pulled into something vast and terrifying. At first, I was floating in a kind of nothingness, pitch black, cold, and utterly silent. I couldn't move. I had no body, but I still existed. Panic rose inside me. Is this death? I thought. Is this it? Eternal nothing? But then something changed. A sound, a vibration maybe, like a hum filled with sorrow and power, began to swell all around me. Then came the light. But not just any light. This was not the sun or some fluorescent ICU bulb. This light was alive. It was sentient, and it knew me. I could feel that it knew everything about me, every action, every word, every intention. I should have been comforted, but I wasn't. I felt seen, completely, terrifyingly seen. Then the light formed a shape, a being. No wings, no beard, just an overwhelming presence, warm, infinite, and holy. I didn't have a name for it, but somehow in that moment I knew I was standing before God. And the first thing I said in the silence of my soul was, "But I didn't believe in you." I expected anger, judgment, rejection. After all, I had spent years speaking out against the idea of God, especially the God I thought Christians believed in. To me, religion had always been the source of pain, not healing. I had seen too many of my friends hurt, shunned, and erased by people waving Bibles, so I braced myself for wrath, for punishment. But what I felt was sorrow. Not my sorrow, his. It was like standing beneath an ocean of heartbreak. Not rage, not vengeance, just a deep, sacred grief. Not just for me, but for humanity. For every person who had ever been led away from love, by lies, by trauma, by pride, by pain. That sorrow seeped into every part of me, and for the first time since my childhood, I wept not out of fear, but out of truth. A truth I had run from my whole life. Then he spoke. Not with words, with knowing. It went directly into my being. Like music I couldn't hear but somehow understood. You were always mine. I couldn't speak. I had no mouth, no body, and yet I cried out from the depths of my soul. But I rejected you. I told others you weren't real. I cursed your name. And still, the presence did not waver. I never stopped loving you. Those words, those 5 words broke me. My entire worldview shattered in an instant. Everything I thought was real, everything I had fought for, stood on shaky ground. I wasn't in the presence of some invented skyfather or hateful deity. I was standing before truth itself, and he loved me. I was shown moments from my life flashes, like film reels. Not just the things I did, but the intentions behind them. When I helped someone, he smiled. When I mocked, dismissed, or hurt others, especially in the name of justice or self-righteousness, I felt his sadness. There was no condemnation, only clarity. Brutal, beautiful clarity. I saw the pride parades, the activism, the speeches, and in many ways, he honored my compassion. But I also saw how my heart had hardened, how I had pushed people away in the name of inclusion, how I made enemies out of people who weren't my enemies at all. And then I was shown something I never expected, the face of Jesus. I didn't recognize him at first, not because he looked different than the images I'd seen, but because I wasn't ready. When I saw the figure approaching from the light, there was such a powerful presence that I almost wanted to turn away. But something in me knew, this was not just a messenger, this was the one. And when his eyes met mine, I collapsed, if a soul can collapse. Every defense, every argument, every hardened wall I'd built up throughout my life crumbled in his gaze. His eyes held eternity, and yet they were fixed on me, not with condemnation, not even with pity, but with love, a kind of love I'd never experienced on earth, not from family, not from lovers, not even from myself. It was fierce, holy, undeniable. And then he said my name. You didn't know me, but I've always known you. I wanted to look away. I wanted to disappear. I mocked you, I thought. I said you were fiction. I told people not to believe in you. I used my voice, my platform, to lead people away from you. He nodded. Not out of agreement, but acknowledgement. You were hurt. You thought I was the cause. You were told lies about me. But I was never your enemy. I was the one who wept with you in your darkest nights. I was the one who whispered to your soul when you cried alone. I was the one who stood by you, waiting, not forcing, not demanding, waiting. He showed me my childhood. The night I found out my uncle had died by suicide. The loneliness I felt after coming out to my family and losing half of them in a single night. The first time someone spit on me at a protest. The time I locked myself in a bathroom, staring at the pills in my hand. He was there, every time. And yet, I never saw him. I never wanted to see him. I blamed him for the pain others inflicted in his name, but he never once agreed with their cruelty. That became so clear. He wasn't the source of rejection. He was the refuge I never ran to. Then, he did something that stunned me. He held out his hands and I saw the wounds, fresh, glowing, alive. This was for you too. I couldn't look away from his hands. Those wounds, those sacred, impossible wounds were not symbols. They were real. Not metaphorical, not poetic, but living, eternal reminders of a love that went far beyond anything I could comprehend. I had spent years dismissing the cross as a relic of oppression, something used to judge, exclude, and divide. But in that moment, I saw it for what it truly was, the rescue mission of the universe. He didn't show them to shame me. He didn't lift his hands as proof that I was wrong. He lifted them because I needed to know just how far he had gone to bring me home. And I broke. I completely shattered. The weight of my pride, my blindness, my bitterness, it all surfaced. Not because he condemned me, but because his mercy was overwhelming. I wanted to throw myself at his feet. I wanted to say, I'm sorry, but no words came. I didn't have to speak. He already knew. You were deceived by pain, he said, but I came to heal it. Suddenly, I was surrounded by scenes I didn't recognize, yet somehow I understood them. I saw other people, souls being embraced by him. Not perfect people, not religious elites, people like me, people with wounds, people who had rebelled, doubted, run. And yet, here they were, home. And then, he said something that pierced me like a sword. My love isn't conditional. But my truth is eternal, and now you must choose." "Choose?" I was confused. "What do you mean?" I wanted to ask, but again the answer came without sound. "You can stay, or you can return. But if you return, it won't be easy. The world will not understand you. The ones who knew you will question you. You will be misunderstood by both sides, but you will not walk alone." I knew what he meant. If I returned, I would never be the same. I could not go back to being the person I was, and I would lose people, friends, maybe even the causes I had dedicated my life to. But how could I say no? I had just seen the source, the truth, the very heart of the universe, and it had loved me back to life. So I whispered in my soul, "Send me back, but don't let me forget." The moment I made that choice to return, everything around me shifted. The light began to pull back, not in anger, but like a parent letting go of a child's hand, knowing the child must now walk forward alone. But before I left that place, Jesus looked into me one last time. I can still feel it now, etched into my spirit forever. He didn't give me a list of rules. He didn't assign me a religion. He gave me a command: love as I loved you. And with that, the light receded and the pain returned. Suddenly, I was yanked back into my body like being pulled through a keyhole. The beeping of machines, the smell of disinfectant, the feeling of a plastic tube down my throat. I was in the ICU, restrained, intubated, and panicking. A nurse rushed to my side. A doctor yelled something. I was alive. The medical team couldn't explain it. I had flatlined for over 3 minutes, and they were preparing to notify my family. My brain should have been damaged. But within hours, I was fully alert, speaking, crying, and remembering. Every second, every word, every tear in that divine encounter. They said it was a near-death experience, that maybe the lack of oxygen caused hallucinations. But I knew better. What I saw was more real than anything I've ever known, more vivid than any dream, more alive than this very flesh I had returned to. And that's when the fear set in, not of death, but of life. How was I going to live after what I saw? What would I say to the friends I had marched beside who still viewed faith as a weapon? What would I say to the people in churches who might reject me because of who I had been? Would either side believe me? But he had already warned me I would be misunderstood by both. Still, I couldn't unsee what I had seen. I couldn't unknow the truth. I had met Jesus, and he wasn't the enemy. He wasn't the judge with a gavel. He was the lover of my soul, and he had scars for me. The days after my discharge from the ICU were some of the loneliest of my life, not because I lacked visitors or support, but because I was carrying a truth that no one around me understood. My closest friends, the very people I had fought with, cried with, and celebrated with for years, looked at me differently when I told them what had happened. They were kind at first, but behind their smiles I could see the doubt forming, the discomfort surfacing. Some laughed nervously and said it was the drugs, or my brain trying to make sense of dying. Others just fell silent. But when I said the name Jesus, something changed in the room every time, like I had betrayed them. One of my closest friends finally confronted me. "Are you seriously becoming one of them now, after everything we've been through?" I wanted to scream that no, I wasn't becoming some caricature, some puppet for religion. But how could I explain what I had seen? How do you explain eternal love to someone who's only ever heard of eternal judgment? I felt torn between two worlds. I didn't belong to the activist circles anymore, not fully. But I also didn't belong in most churches. I tried attending a local one, but the stares, the polite smiles, that didn't reach their eyes. I knew what they were thinking. What's she doing here? I could feel it. But I held onto his voice. You will not walk alone. Over and over, I whispered it like a lifeline. And in the quiet moments, when the noise of fear and doubt faded, I felt him near. In the morning light, in the stillness of prayer, in the tears I wept when no one else was watching, I wasn't alone. I began journaling everything I remembered, word for word. I filled 3 notebooks, every detail, every emotion. I knew this was my calling now, not to argue, not to convince, but to tell the truth of who I met, the truth of who I now serve. Not because I turned my back on who I was, but because I finally saw who I was meant to be. One night, about a month after I left the hospital, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the rainbow flag I used to carry at every rally. It had traveled with me across states, waved proudly above my head in moments of triumph and resistance. Now, it felt like a piece of a different life, not because I was ashamed of where I came from, but because I now carried a deeper banner in my heart, one I never expected to take up. I whispered a question into the silence. God, what now? And the answer came gently. Live what you saw. Be who I showed you. That didn't mean I had to erase my past. It meant I had to redeem it. Every talent I had, my voice, my passion, my compassion, was never meant to destroy faith. It was meant to build bridges. Not bridges of compromise, but of truth and mercy. And that meant loving people on both sides of the divide, even when they hated each other. Even when they hated me. I started writing publicly, not preachy blog posts, just honest words. My story, what happened, what I saw, the God I met. I didn't try to win arguments. I just told the truth as it was revealed to me. Some messages came in saying I was a traitor to the LGBTQ community. Others from Christians said I was a false convert, a sinner parading in holy clothes. But then, others came, quietly, from the shadows. I don't believe in God, but what you wrote made me cry. I had a dream about Jesus too, but I was too scared to tell anyone. I walked away from church years ago. Reading your story made me feel him again. Each message was a small miracle. Proof that what I saw wasn't just for me. It was for every soul who thinks they're too far gone. For every heart convinced they're too broken, too messy, too unloved. I was all of those things, and still, he came for me. And now, my life is no longer about pride or protest. It's about presence, his presence, everywhere I go, in everyone I meet, especially the ones who don't believe he exists. Because I didn't either until I met him. I don't have all the answers. I'm not a theologian. I'm not perfect. I still wrestle with parts of my past. I still get angry. I still cry when people walk away because they think I've sold out. But I don't follow a religion. I follow a person, Jesus. The same Jesus who met me in death. The same Jesus who looked at me, with all my contradictions and scars, and called me his. People ask me if I regret the life I lived before. And I tell them this: I regret the walls I built, the bitterness, the refusal to even consider that God could love me as I was. But I don't regret the journey, because every moment, even the darkest ones, led me to that ICU bed where I died and was born again. Now, when I walk into rooms, I no longer carry a banner of identity or ideology. I carry light, not mine his. And when people ask what changed, I tell them gently, I died, and met the one I swore didn't exist, and he loved me more deeply than anyone ever has. I used to live for applause, for acceptance, for justice. Now I live for truth, and the truth is this: God is real, God is love, and he is not who many of us were taught to fear. He is the wounded Savior who waits patiently for us to stop running. So if you're watching this and you've ever felt like you don't belong in church, or like God couldn't possibly love someone like you, I'm living proof that he does. I rejected him, mocked him, denied him, and he still met me in the void and called me daughter. This is not a story about religion. This is a story about a rescue. And if he could reach me in the middle of death itself, then he can reach you too. All you have to do is say yes.